Hi and welcome to Competitive Elder Dragon Highlander Television. My name is Mons and host of this YouTube channel. Now on this YouTube channel we're often talking about tips and tricks, but also looking into tournament data of various commander decks entering into tournaments and looking in how they are performing and individual win rate. And I'm often looking into comments and asking for various suggestions. And this comment is asking for a lot of different things and suggestions. By the way, the column things and showing win rate and inclusion rate is something I'm working on. But also, he wants the win rate for Toxic Deluge, Damned, Cavern of Souls and Clone Effects. And I thought, Clone Effects, that's something that deserves its own video. Because it is a very interesting topic. It is an area that's been growing by more power creep, basically. So I could show you the win rate of Phantasmal Image, Phyrexian Metamorph and Flesh Duplicant, but let's actually try and really dig deeper on how good clone effects in general are. For example, everyone can understand that a dockside extortionist in play that is being cloned by a Flesh Duplicate is a secondary dockside, also Phantasmal Image and Phyrexian Metamorph. And I mean, your opponents could have a dockside in play, and you could cause your Phantasmal Image to make that Phantasmal Image become a dockside. I mean, more dockside, more good. But there are more clone effect variants, or not really clone effects, but similarities. For example, Saw in Half might be one of the best potential dockside duplicant effects. Because you're sawing your dockside into two and you're getting two dockside ETB triggers, and that's good. The difference here is that Flesh Duplicant can become one of your opponent's dockside, while Saw in Half can only become your dockside. What I mean, you have to have your own dockside in play for Saw in Half to work. On the other hand, you could give someone else two docksides, but don't do that. Which means that the Saw in Half Hoarding Broodlord combo is kinda interesting if you're also into something of a duplicate cloning effect idea of dockside. There's also a potential upgrade here by Delany Streetwise Lookout that is going to basically make dockside trigger twice. And if you have a Saw in Half onto that and then you have a Flesh Duplicate onto that, then yeah, lots of treasures. There's also an existing combo Heat Shimmer Twin Flame that you can use to make temporarily copies of dockside, but this is something that also goes infinite with something like Dual Caster Mage. So your Heat Shimmer Twin Flame are variants to Flesh Duplicate and Phantasmal Image, and they also work in a 2-card combo with Dual Caster Mage. And this just means that there's a lot of angles to dig into here. I mean, it's not just this, it's more, and we're gonna try to answer and give a picture of all of it. We're going to do this by using tournament data. So if you're new to this channel, don't worry, I will orientate you. So here we have total decks that are decks that have entered into various different tournaments. And in each tournament, they're usually playing something between 2 to 5 or maybe 7 games. Then here we have Dockside, Phantasmal Image and Phyrexian Metamorph. And then we have a value here, play all cards, 2,338. That is that amount of decks that have entered into tournaments with these specific free cards all in there. But we're doing one more thing. We have Clever Impersonator, Cursed Mirror and Flesh Duplicant. Now these are in black and white, which means we have also excluded them. So those 2,338 are decks that all contain Dockside Extortionist, Phantasmal Image and Phyrexian Metamorph, all of those free cards, but don't include a single copy of Clever Impersonator, Cursed Mirror or Flesh Duplicant, or the cards up there in black and white. And the win rate, loss and wins and draws calculated together from those 2,338 are in green 24.78. While you have win rate without cards, which is basically the remaining decks from those 12,773, very big sample size, is lower. As you can see, the win rate is 21.31. But I think it is important to take that into some form of perspective, like how good is that actually? For example, here you have Atraxa the Grand Unifier that have entered into 370 different tournaments, or different decks that have entered into different tournaments, and she has an average win rate of 23% basically. We have some commanders that haven't seen a huge entry, for example Abaddon the Despoiler, total dex 5 and a win rate of 15 only. Elsha of the Infinite is currently sitting on an amazing, let's go 78% total win rate with 50 dex total enter, so it's not that many. Nagela is sitting on 24.26 from 526 entries. TNK, Tymna and Kram, is sitting on 27.53 from 1117 entries. This is the most popular commander entry in the entire tournament scene currently. The most popular deck, so to say. Potentially the best deck inside the entire format. So that should give you some perspective to the win rate you can see up there in green. But we can tweak this and change potential combinations. So here we're adding Twin Flame to the mix. And we're putting Dual Caster Mage as an exclusion. Why are we doing that? If you remember, Twin Flame and Dual Caster Mage is a 2-card combo for 5 mana that just wins the game by making infinite Dual Caster Mage and attacking and winning the match. But why in the world would we potentially exclude that? That's like playing fast as Oracle without Tainted Pact and Consult. Truth be told, Dual Caster Mage isn't that good and 5 mana is actually quite a lot. So now we're looking into how good is Twin Flame when you're not playing Dual Caster Mage, but when you're playing Dockside Extortionist. And as you can see, the win rate is actually pretty good. 26.09. Now I want to emphasize something very important here. The play all cards are only 22. So that's only 22 decks that have entered into tournaments from the total count of 12,773, which means that the result is not statistically significant because the sample size isn't large enough, but it's showing a potential, a direction of a possibility. We can also tweak it like this, so we're still having Dual Caster Mage up there in exclusion. We haven't included Twin Flame or Heat Shimmer, so Twin Flame or Heat Shimmer could be in these decks or out of these decks. Now instead we're looking at something like Temur, we're looking at Kinnan. Now black could be added here, white could be added here, doesn't matter. We're just looking at Dockside, Kinnan, Phantasmal Image and Phyrexian Metamorph. This is a very powerful effect. If you have a Kinnan in play, you have a Dockside in play, you're casting Phantasmal Image, or actually, let me phrase it like this. If an opponent has a Dockside in play, you have a Kinnan and you cast Phantasmal Image, that's good. But now we're also including Dockside, excluding Dual Caster Mage and excluding Hoarding Broodlord. And we're getting a 25.15 average win rate. Actually indicating a pretty good result. Now of course this is Kinnan inside the 99, not Kinnan as the commander, because Kinnan can't have Dockside in the 99 if Kinnan is the commander. So far this is looking great, but what if we're tweaking it even more? We're moving Dual Caster Mage down into the inclusion. As you can see here, Dual Caster Mage is excluded, now Dual Caster Mage is included, and we're adding Twin Flame as well. We're still excluding the Hoarding Broodlord. Suddenly the win rate dropped a lot, but also the play all cards dropped a lot. As you can see here, we have 240 and now we have 22. When something isn't heavily played, that is also an indicator that it's not really working out. For example, here you have 2,338, that's very popular, and it's still doing a very good success rate, as you can see. And when suddenly you're doing something like this, this choice is not popular. For example, if we go back here again, all these 3 cards are still included here, and it's not doing great. So the indication here is that adding Dual Caster Mage, adding Twin Flame might not be recommended. However, if we're looking at this one again, including Twin Flame still together with the Dockside Extortionist seems to be a good choice. For example, if you compare this one with this one, this is the better choice. So here we are not including, or not excluding Dual Caster Mage, I mean. Here we are including Twin Flame, excluding Dual Caster Mage, and the win rate increases. Let's go back to this picture again. We have Clever Impersonator, Cursed Mirror, Flesh Duplicant excluded. What happens if we're moving down Flesh Duplicant and Cursed Mirror, still excluding the Clever Impersonator? And here we don't have enough sample size. We only have 6 decks that have entered into tournaments with these 5 cards together, and that's not enough. We have a win rate of 12.50, which is indicating that that didn't turn out so great, but the sample size is just so low, so the win rate might just be 30%, who knows. But I do have enough sample size if we're removing the cursed mirror. You see, we need to tweak things here and there to figure something out. So here we have 115 decks that are playing Flesh Duplicant, Phantasmal Image, Phyrexian Metamorph and Dockside Extortionist together, getting a win rate of 24.02. And as you can see, by not including Flesh Duplicant, it's actually dropping a tiny bit in win rate. But as you can also see, the playable cards is drastically decreasing, and the reason for that is that Flesh Duplicant is just a very new card. Things are always happening in the data sample, and my data sample goes back an entire year, which means that Flesh Duplicant haven't existed in the beginning of when I started calculating this data sample. So over time a lot could happen and change with Flesh Duplicant's potential performance. But what about this variation? We're now excluding Dockside Extortionist. Why in the world will we do that? Well, obviously sometimes you can't include Dockside Extortionist because you don't have access to the red color identity. And suddenly the win rate drastically dropped. And well, we all know Dockside Extortionist is good, so yeah, not surprised about this outcome. But if we once again take a look at this, the win rate could drastically be lower. I mean, this is still a bit higher. 22% basically is kind of close to the average, because if you look at the win rate without cards and the total win rate in red, they're pretty much equal. And we can actually even get lower. So now we're including Dockside Extortionist, Dual Caster Mage, Heat Shimmer, Phantasmal Image, Phyrexian Metamorph and Twin Flame. And the card that we're excluding is Clever Impersonator. We have 110 tournament entries with this pair, and we have a win rate of 20.61%, which is in red. In other words, not that recommended. In other words, the verdict here is that potentially this combo is not that great. Once again, Twin Flame seems to be doing good, but once you're starting to add things, it's starting to look worse. And this is why I wanted to do the video in this kind of form of way, because you're getting a very good picture of what kind of pathway, what kind of card combination synergy you probably should be going for. Here you're clearly seeing that it's okay, 20% isn't like terrible. It kind of depends on what kind of aim you have with your commander deck, so to say, but still we've seen better results by doing other deck construction decisions. Now in the beginning of the video I also kind of talked about what if we're not playing blue? What if we're trying to copy and clone our dockside without the color identity of blue? For example, Saw in Half is great. Here we have Cursed Mirror that can become a copy of dockside basically, and Saw in Half. This is basically sand, not including blue, because we're excluding Phantasmal Image and Phyrexian Metamorph. And the win rate is in green. We have a 23.15% win rate from a total of 113 decks playing this. This is basically Mardu, Rakdos, and not just, but simply you're not including blue here. And honestly, this is kind of fine and good, I would have to say. But we also had that Delny Streetwise Lookout that is also potentially helping dockside as well. Here I have to say we don't have enough sample size. This is basically the only time Delny has appeared, more or less, inside the Tumna Mardu variants. We only have 3 decks, and those 3 decks together basically achieved a 33.33 average win rate. We're excluding Kinnan and we're excluding Phantasmal Image, basically cutting out green and blue more or less. So here we can't currently say anything, but as more decks are going to enter into tournaments with these cards together, we will achieve a better understanding of this in the future. But what about if we're actually adding blue? We're adding that Phantasmal Image, so suddenly Phantasmal Image is moving from exclusion into inclusion and the win rate drastically dropped. This is basically sans green. You're playing something like Tumna and Kram. And we only have 3 decks, so the win rate isn't trustworthy. So I want to highly point out that this is showcasing a 33.33 average win rate. This is showcasing a 16.67. Don't trust any of this. The win rate sample size is just too small, so we just need more tournament entries with these kinds of variants to start being able to say something. But I truly believe in this. I truly believe that Delny inside Tuna in a Mardu variant will be a great variant to a dockside copy effect, but also Delny together with Tuna is pretty amazing. Still on the topic of not including blue, we are now excluding Phantasmal Image and Phyrexian Metamorph. We're including Cursed Mirror, that is a variant to basically Phyrexian Metamorph. You're copying, you're making an ETB trigger of your dockside extra here. And you have Dual Custom Mage, Hoarding Broodlord, Saw in Half. That Saw in Half is great together with dockside. Twin Flame is great together with dockside. And then you have the Hoarding Broodlord inside here. This is basically you're playing Rakdos or a form of like non-blue Hoarding Broodlord Dual Custom Mage combo. You can have green in here, you can have white in here. We don't have a really high sample size. We have only 19 decks that have been playing all of these 6 cards together. And the win rate is 15.29. Over time, we might get a better picture of this basically 6 card combination potential, but it's not showing a good promise. And also the very low inclusion rate is indicating that people aren't choosing this kind of combo. So it might not be a good strategy to play the Dual Custom Mage Twin Flame as we've already seen in other perspectives, but adding Hoarding Broodlord and Saw in Half to that might not be good either. So far we have learned a lot. This seems to be a good combination. Having Phantasmal Image and Phyrexian Metamorph together with Dockside seems to be a good thing. Adding Twin Flame but not adding Dual Custom Mage seems to be doing a more good thing. Adding Kinnan, maybe not adding Twin Flame. Twin Flame could be in or out, but staying away from that Dual Custom Mage also seems to be a very good thing. We're starting to get some understanding of Flesh Duplicant's power level together with this combination. It's staying around in the same kind of win rate value. But there's one more very important thing we can do to get a better understanding of this combination, of the cloning effects. Right now we're not looking at any clone effects. We're looking at the best win rate that I've kind of found with a very high sample size. So we have play all cards 554 and an average win rate of 28.19. The win rate without these cards together is 21.66. The 6 cards we're playing here are Grixis, Ad Nauseam, Dockside, Opposition Agent, Orcish Bowmaster, Fastest Oracle, and Underworld Breach. Basically the Grixis powerhouse package. We're excluding a few value engines that have showcased some weaker power level win rate over time. So Daffy Voidwalker, Gillidrake, and Talion the Kindly Lord. So this works, but what if we're starting to add clone effects to this? Ta-da! That's a really good promise. So we have the exact same exclusion cards, Daffy Voidwalker, Gillidrake, and Talion. We have Underworld Breach, Dockside, and Ad Nauseam still. Well, if you're playing this, Fastest Oracle is 100% going to be included inside this. But now we're adding Flesh Duplicate, Phantasmal Image, and Phyrexian Metamorph. If you're taking a look at this, we're basically swapping out Opposition Agent, Orcish Bowmaster, and Fastest Oracle, and boom, we're adding the clone effects. Flesh Duplicant, Phantasmal Image, and Phyrexian Metamorph. And the win rate is amazing, but we have to clarify that the sample size is extremely low. Only 3 cards so far, but over time we're going to see more and more people experimenting around this. I mean, people aren't going to stop playing Grixis. So I think this is showcasing a very good promise, but I would like to just showcase this picture again. We can't trust this win rate, we can't trust this win rate, and we definitely can't trust this win rate either. But it's showing a promise. We can, however, get a little bit higher sample size by cutting Flesh Duplicate. So Flesh Duplicate have been added to the exclusion here instead, and the reason for that is Flesh Duplicate, once again, haven't been played forever. So we're kind of looking back in history into the time where people weren't, or well, when Flesh Duplicate didn't exist, when you couldn't play it. And suddenly we have a pretty amazing win rate. We have 29.54, and now the sample size is 186. That is showcasing a very good sample size and a very good win rate. Once again, if we're looking at this, 28.19. And if we're swapping out and looking more into the clone effects, the win rate is higher. So over time, if we're moving the flesh duplicate back into the exclusion rate, into the inclusion here, I'm sorry, I think this win rate is going to stay. So the sample size isn't trustworthy, the result is not statistically significant, but my personal experience is telling me that I think this is going to showcase a good result. But looking into only Grixis is kinda boring because everyone isn't playing Grixis, and a good way to understand if something is good is by taking it and putting it into examples of other things as well. So this is also a combo that is doing good. Here we're basically excluding the core Grixis package. We're excluding Adnos, we're excluding Fastest Oracle, we're excluding Underworld Breach, we're including these Bant combination, Derevi, Emil and Gaia's Cradle. This is basically mostly played by Ceesay and Thrasius with red, or Thrasius with black, or Kenrith can also do this. If we're specifically looking at Ceesay, for example, we have a sample size of 168 with an average win rate of 28.77, which is actually better than this, by the way, showcasing that Ceesay is definitely dominating on this combo. But let's not focus too much on Ceesay, let's stick with this variation. And let's suddenly just add Dockside and Phantasmal Image. We're keeping the exact same exclusion cards, Adnos, Fastest Oracle and Underworld Breach. Those are the exact same as you can see here, but boom, we're adding red and we're adding Phantasmal Image. The win rate is going up a bit, but the sample size is drastically dropping to 49. The reason why this isn't that popular is because Phantasmal Image and Emil the Blessed won't work. So if an opponent has a dockside, you cast Phantasmal Image, you get a dockside ETB copy, and then you cast Emil the Blessed, you don't go Infinite Treasures, because you're going to kill your own Phantasmal Image dual dockside extortionist by the Phantasmal Image trigger. So the sample size could be better, but it's still showcasing a very good promise, and the sample size isn't terrible. We could of course expand and also include Phyrexian Metamorph, and as you can see here, if I'm just toggling between these two, the sample size drops a tiny bit, but it stays quite the same. The play all cards is still pretty much the same, but I want to increase the sample size, so we're going to remove Underworld Breach from the exclusion section. So this combo you're currently looking at, this 6-card combination, is either played by Thrasius together with some Bruce or Akiri, Sans Black or Ceesay, or Kenrith that is not playing Fastest Oracle or Ad Nauseam. Underworld Breach could be inside the deck, or Underworld Breach could be excluded out of the deck. And the win rate is pretty amazing still. The sample size is still very low, we can't really trust the win rate. But if you remember, we've looked at a lot of different variations around these cards, so I do think I'm personally going to trust this win rate. This has been a very long and detailed video with lots of numbers, lots of different card combinations. So let's just make a fast overview. This is a good, lacking the access of red, not having dockside in your deck, and playing clone effects is still kinda okay, but not great. Red seems to be doing good. Adding Twin Flame but staying away from dual custom ace is showing a promise. Adding Kinnan together with dual dockside and these, staying away from dual custom age, seems to be doing good, seems to be doing better than this. With lots of different angles, we've found that adding dual custom age is not recommended. We've mentioned that Grixis is amazing inside this video, but also adding clones to the Grixis package seems to be a good idea. And the same thing is true for other combos that is not Grixis, basically adding clone effects to something that is also, including dockside, is also good. But if you have further questions, other ideas of things I could look into that I've missed, or have any feedback into the method on how I'm trying to figure out these things, please leave a comment below like this one and I will do my very best to answer that comment. There's potentially lots of different ways I could improve my methods here. I am far from the master of data and statistics, I'm just using my hobby spare time and my interest in it and my amateur knowledge to try to figure things out. And your suggestions and feedbacks is definitely making me better at this stuff and helping the cEDH community, I hope, to give a better picture. I hope this video have helped you in any form of way, and thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time. Take care!